Let it not be said that I am not a thorough manga reviewer. With the final volumes of My Hero Academia Vigilantes 14 and 15 out, I decided I have to reread the ones that came before it. I got up to all of them here. But I've only reviewed up to 6, even though I've read 7 to 13. So a reread is in order. That way I can get caught up in the story again. It's hard to always be remembering these things because only like 2 volumes come out a year, and it's you know, if I read them as they come out, I have to wait like a year for the next part of the story. So sometimes I wait for like 4 or 5 to be out, borrow them and read them, or I read them as I go, but then I forget because it's been like 3 years since I've read the, or actually 7 to 13 would be, yeah, almost like 3 or 4 years. So let us do the reread and then we'll finish off the series. Alright, so let's discuss My Hero Academia Vigilantes 7 and 8. 7 mostly focuses on Captain Celebrity. He's a superhero from America with blonde hair. He's a bit of a cad, getting involved in some scandals. So Makoto's trying to rebrand his image, and our mysterious villain has these weird creatures with bombs. It seems to be a sort of thing, kind of not like Nomu. They're kind of like genetic experiments, very similar to Nomu. But Volume 7 basically explores the Sky Egg incident, where they're trying to have this big festival full of superheroes. However, gets attacked by a flying creature with bombs, and Captain Celebrity has his redemption story of sorts. So it sort of leaves off on a cliffhanger, though. And then Volume 8 has the first half ends up being the Sky Egg incident, recovery stuff happening. And then the second half focuses on a young Shoto Aizawa, also known as a racer. He had it seems to be a lot of trio of friends, kind of the same way that Midoriya has friendship with Uraka and Ingenium. The 3 of them, kind of like Harry Potter, you know, you have like the nerdy one, you got the girl, you got the main character. There's Shoto, there's President Mick, and then there's another guy who has a cloud power. And basically, prequel story involving a monster and some supplementary material for something that actually happens in the main story for My Hero Academia. A lot of this takes place when characters are younger, so we get to see him as a teenager in the hero course doing things, and that one actually ends on a cliffhanger as well. So that'll be concluded in Volume 9. I forgot to mention in Volume 8 of My Hero Vigilantes is that they introduced finally the main villain of the series. He's known as Number 6. If you're unfamiliar, there are other characters that are built into the canon that are sort of not tangentially related to One for All. All for One. Yes, All for One. Basically, there's a movie called My Hero Academia 2 Heroes, and the villain is named 9 because he has 9 powers. He might have been a genetic experiment from the same doctor who helped All for One. So this character's named 6. I don't know if he has 6 powers, but he basically was given a power from Knuckleduster, and he lost his powers. His quirk was taken away from him in a flashback and given to this new villain named 6, who kind of looks like Michael Jackson, a young Michael Jackson. He even has like a disguise in one of the later volumes, but he basically has a pretty sweet fight with Knuckleduster, and we finally get to know like his name, what he's about, and what he's trying to do. And then we're moving on to Volumes 9 and 10 of Vigilantes. Volume 9 gives us the payoff story of young Shoto Aizawa going up against a giant quirk monster in the city, and of course the finale of that. Then we're quickly moving on to some normal stuff. Basically the relationship between Pop and Koichi. She likes him, but she hasn't been able to tell him his feelings. Makoto comes back, and she's been, you know, kicking up a storm, trying to start a corporation and things like that. And mostly introduction of Mr. Manager. He turns out to be 6 in disguise, and he's trying to kidnap Pop, and then is able to actually kidnap her and turn her into a villain with the Queen Bee quirk, which we've seen before. So now Pop is a villain, and she's going on a rampage. So Volume 10 continues that story. The design is pretty cool for Pop, but basically it's Koichi taking on Queen Bee now, or Queen Pop they're calling her. And we get a nice cameo from Endeavor, who shows up and basically wants to incinerate anyone who gets in the way, any vigilante as well. So were basically just, the whole volume was basically them just battling each other. It ends on another cliffhanger, of course. I don't know why, but this author seems to not be able to wrap things up within 6 chapters or so, and it's another cliffhanger. But that's how volume 10 ends anyway, and volume 11 will have the finale of the Queen Bee arc. Alright, volumes 11 and 12 of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. 11 basically gives us the conclusion to the Queen Pop arc. It's rather uneventful. 6 shows up and he tries to essentially do his introduction, but endeavors too over the top to allow that, and basically gives us a final meeting between Koichi and 6, and basically a sort of declaration of his intention to eliminate both Pop and him. And then the second half of the story quickly moves into the Fight Club flashback. Knuckleduster basically recounts the time he was a pro hero and he has to infiltrate a Quark-based fight club, which introduces Rappa, who we know from the main series, and also Mirko, a hero in training. She's kind of unhinged, and we get to see that. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting seeing this sort of new aspect, lots of action, and of course the villains show up and they want to basically steal quirks from the people. That's why they're there. And then that's concluded in volume 12, which is even more action-packed because they bring in another, I guess, not a Nomu. Yeah, I guess a Nomu, an early version of a Nomu with rock stretch powers with martial arts, and ends up being this huge fight, and All Might shows up, and basically that becomes a sort of, halfway it becomes a conclusion finisher. And then Koichi is then declared a vigilante wanted, so he ends up being pursued by Edgeshot, Best Jeanist, and Eraser. So it ends up being an Ingenium, the brother. So basically it becomes a sort of fugitive act and ends quickly before the next volume. So that's the catch up on those two. And we're finally at the final volumes of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Reread 13, and then we've got, I'll go over 14 and 15. So essentially, in my reread of 13, it's basically the start of a 3-volume finale. 6 has set up these bomber villain guys. They're known as the Anonymous Foot Soldiers. They're these creepy Nomu-like precursors. They their organs have EMP that take out cell phone activity. They smash things. They break vehicles. They cause small little traffic jams to block everyone in Naruhata. It's basically still we're going on with Aizawa and Ingenium and Edgeshot chasing Koichi because he is a vigilante. However, they have to cut that stuff off because they have to rescue the citizens, as there's a giant citywide blackout in that part of the city. We have the final confrontation of 6 and Koichi. So volume 14 is sort of a precursor. It's still in the middle of the finale, but it's basically all action. I mean, the end of volume 13, 6 transforms into another creature, a sort of beast-like creature, because he's like 80% bomber cells or something. It's something that One For All sort of equipped him with. 6 is one of his experiments, so it's basically different forms, different battles, parts of the city, and it's really interesting because 6 also has a sort of mentor in the form of imaginary O'Clock, and it's basically just Koichi basically adapting and fighting him for the entire volume, and him getting more mad, him growing, him getting bigger and bigger, lots of twists, lots of crazy stuff going on. And then basically, yeah, we're just kind of winding down to a finale, introduce a couple more elements, and then 6 transforms once again, and then of course everything comes to a head in volume 15. The climactic final volume. Pop kind of stays in the hospital for most of the volume. You get a little bit of stuff from Knuckleduster, but mostly, yeah, it's Koichi taking on his final form of the villain. They try to include this sort of weird playground sort of analogy that I didn't really like. It is a huge finale. I would love to see this adapted for an anime, but they probably won't because it's just Koichi moves around so much that like it'd be a nightmare for the animation team, especially the explosions and the whole Pop jumping around and movement. It's a very dynamic art style by Betancourt, and obviously the writer. But yeah, just it's a huge, large finale. Playground analogy I didn't quite like. They end things about 3/4 of the way through, and then you get your finale with wrap up of everything. Pretty satisfying finale, I would say. But overall, it's a good supplemental series if you like My Hero Academia. It's a short, well, not short, it's 15 volumes, but you get some extra insight into a younger Toshinori, All Might, a little bit of a, there's a really good arc with Aizawa and President Mick's friend, which is a little bit important for the main series. But overall, we do get to see some interesting facets of your favorite superheroes. So a couple All Might stories in there, popping in and out. Same with younger Aizawa, as I mentioned. A little bit of Ingenium too, the older brother of Ida. And then the Miss Midnight to get something as well. So it's a good supplemental series if you're a hardcore fan of My Hero Academia and you want more stuff. The characters are interesting. You got Pop, Koichi, and Knuckleduster. This can be described as a fun, action-packed, sort of easy to pick up and put down series. It's only 15 volumes. It's over. That's all you get. You get the ending for everyone, and that's all there is to it. And it just adds a little. It's almost like the special features of OVA. Feels like an OVA. It's not. You don't have to read this to get My Hero, but it's fun to just watch more stuff. So, those are my thoughts on My Hero Academia Vigilantes Volume 13 to 15.